Mark and Olivia Turner had been married for 5 years, and every room in their grand Chicago home echoed with everything but laughter. The mansion was filled with success, polished floors, luxury cars, and awards. But what Olivia wanted most was something money couldn't buy: a child. Olivia tried every fertility clinic, every wellness program, every diet plan that promised hope. Maybe next month, doctors would say kindly. But even kindness began to sound cruel. Mark buried himself in work, running his investment firm like a man avoiding silence. Their home staff came and went until Grace Miller arrived. She was young, quiet, and diligent, the kind of woman who carried sunshine even when tired. Olivia liked her instantly. "Grace feels like calm," she told Mark one evening. But Grace had her own secret, one she hid behind loose sweaters and long work hours. Her boyfriend Troy hadn't called in weeks, and the small life growing inside her didn't stop for schedules or service. As the Turners argued in the study about another failed IVF cycle, Grace stood in the kitchen, hand on her belly, whispering, "Just a few more months, little one. We'll be okay." Grace's belly grew quietly under her plain uniform, but so did the tension in the Turner home. Olivia was growing distant, her smiles shorter, her patience thinner. Mark hardly came home before midnight anymore. Grace noticed it all, yet said nothing. But behind her calm eyes, worry was clawing at her. Troy hadn't answered a single message in over a month. She still worked long hours, sweeping, cleaning, caring for a family she barely understood. One late afternoon, Olivia returned early. She saw Grace in the nursery she'd prepared years ago, dusting the crib that had never held a child. "Why are you in here?" Olivia snapped, her voice trembling. Grace froze, clutching her stomach. "Just cleaning, ma'am." 2 weeks later, the unthinkable happened. While serving breakfast, Grace felt her water break. Pain tore through her body, and within minutes, chaos filled the house. Mrs. Dalton, the housekeeper, rushed to help as Grace screamed through labor on the living room floor. When the baby's cry finally echoed, silence fell. Grace looked up, trembling, eyes full of pain and defiance. "Mr. Turner, you're the father." Olivia's coffee cup shattered. Mark's face went white. The house felt smaller that morning, like every hallway carried the echo of Grace's words. Mark Turner stood by the window, jaw tight, trying to make sense of what had just torn through his life. Olivia sat on the sofa, trembling, her wedding ring twisting back and forth on her finger. "Grace," Mark said finally, voice low, "what are you talking about?" She cradled the newborn in a blanket Mrs. Dalton had grabbed from the linen closet. "You know, it happened that night when you dropped me off, after the company dinner. You remember?" Olivia's head snapped up. "Mark, you what?" "I gave her a ride, that's all," he said quickly, but the words stumbled out like a lie even he didn't believe. Rumors travel faster than truth. By afternoon, 2 neighbors had called Olivia just checking in, and one gossip blog already hinted that Chicago's most admired CEO was caught in a domestic scandal. Grace stayed upstairs, feeding her baby, tears falling onto the tiny fingers clutching hers. She hadn't meant for this, at least that's what she told herself, but fear had a way of twisting survival into desperation. Downstairs, Olivia whispered, "If this is true, our marriage is over." By the next morning, the Turner mansion wasn't a home anymore. It was a battlefield wrapped in marble and silence. Olivia didn't come down for breakfast. Mark ate alone, his untouched coffee turning cold beside the newspaper that carried a headline too close to his truth. CEO Mark Turner faces scandal as former employee claims paternity. Grace heard Mrs. Dalton whispering on the phone, trying to defend the family's name. "No one knows what's real, but I've seen that girl. She's broken." Upstairs, Grace rocked her baby, staring out at the city skyline. Every car horn, every sound from the street reminded her that life outside went on, while hers had frozen in shame. She'd expected Troy to come, to claim her, to help her. He didn't. When Olivia finally entered the nursery, she didn't shout. She just stood there, arms crossed. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked quietly. Grace swallowed hard. "I told the truth." "Then prove it," Olivia said coldly. "A DNA test." For a second, the room felt like it couldn't breathe. Grace nodded slowly, but her eyes glistened with something more than fear, something that looked like regret. The test was arranged within days, quiet, discreet, and handled by Mark's company physician to avoid public eyes. Still, secrets have a way of leaking through cracks. Mark sat in his office that morning, staring at his phone, unable to focus on the business report in front of him. The headlines had already cost him a key client. "Family matters," his assistant whispered to someone on the phone. He could feel his world shrinking. At home, Grace waited in the guest room, holding her baby close. Mrs. Dalton tried to comfort her, but Grace's mind was a storm. She remembered that night, the company dinner, the rain, how Mark had offered her a ride home. He'd been kind, fatherly, nothing more. But when Troy disappeared and fear took over, lies seemed like the only way to survive. Olivia walked into the lab herself when the results came in. The technician looked uneasy. "Mrs. Turner, your husband, he's not the father." Olivia's knees weakened. She stared at the paper in disbelief, realizing that Grace had accused the wrong man and that her marriage might have been shattered for nothing. But something about Grace's fear told her this wasn't over. Grace couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the paper Olivia had held, proof that Mark wasn't the father. The secret she thought would protect her had turned into a storm she couldn't control. Mrs. Dalton sat beside her on the bed, folding a tiny onesie. "You need to make this right, dear," she said softly. "Lies grow heavy. They crush good people." Grace's lips trembled. "I didn't mean to ruin them. I just didn't know what else to do." "You had a choice," Mrs. Dalton replied, her voice kind but firm. "We always do." Tears ran down her cheeks. She remembered the night Troy promised he'd marry her once he got on his feet. She believed him, even when the calls stopped and the messages never came. When the pregnancy test turned positive, fear drowned every thought. She couldn't lose her job, not when she had nothing else. Downstairs, Mark told Olivia quietly, "We'll keep this private. The press doesn't need more fuel." Olivia nodded, but her eyes were still cold. As Grace rocked her baby, she whispered, "I'm sorry, little one. I just wanted you to have a chance." It was raining again, the kind of steady drizzle that blurred the city lights outside the Turner mansion. Grace stood by the window, humming softly to her baby, when a knock echoed through the front door. Mrs. Dalton answered, and her voice carried up the stairs. "Grace, there's someone here for you." When Grace came down, her breath caught. Troy, the man she had loved, the man who vanished, now stood dripping wet in the foyer, holding a cheap bouquet of gas station roses. "You look good," he said awkwardly. Grace stared, words frozen. "You left me. You didn't even call." He sighed, shifting his weight. "I messed up, okay? But I'm here now. I saw the news, figured I should fix this before it gets worse." Olivia appeared at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You must be Troy. Then you're the father, aren't you?" Troy hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I am." The silence that followed was thick. Grace clutched her baby closer, tears mixing with relief and shame. But Mark's voice broke the stillness from behind Olivia. "Then you'll also face what your choices cost her." The next morning, the house gathered in the living room. Mark, Olivia, Grace, Mrs. Dalton, and Troy. The air felt heavy, like judgment itself was waiting in the room. Mark stood near the fireplace, his voice calm but edged. "Grace, you lied about me. That could have destroyed my marriage, my company, everything I've worked for." Grace looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "I know," she whispered. I panicked. I thought if people believed the father was powerful, they'd stop looking at me like a mistake. Troy shifted uneasily beside her. I should have been there. It's my fault too. Mark turned to him sharply. You abandoned her. A real man doesn't walk away when life gets hard. Olivia's tone softened for the first time. Grace, your baby is innocent. We can't undo what's been done, but we can decide what happens next. Grace finally looked up, eyes red, but resolute. I'll leave after today. You deserve peace. I'll raise my child alone. Mrs. Dalton reached for her hand. You don't have to do it alone, dear. Sometimes forgiveness builds stronger walls than pride ever could. For the first time, no one argued. The morning sun poured gently through the wide windows, washing the house in a quiet glow that felt almost like peace. Grace packed her small suitcase slowly, folding each baby blanket with care. The baby slept in the crib, the same crib Olivia once decorated in hope. Downstairs, Mrs. Dalton was making breakfast, her eyes red from crying. Mark sat at the table, staring at his coffee but not drinking it. Olivia stood near the door, pretending to check her phone. Everyone was waiting for the sound of footsteps that would make it real. When Grace finally came down, the room fell silent. Thank you for everything, she said softly. I know I hurt you all. I'll carry that with me, but I want my child to grow up honest, not under the shadow of my mistake. Olivia's throat tightened. She looked at the baby, tiny, peaceful and pure, and something in her heart broke open. Grace, wait. Grace turned, tears streaming. I can't have children, but maybe I can still give love. Stay here, let us help. For the first time in months, Grace smiled, small, trembling, but full of hope. Months passed, and the Turner mansion no longer felt cold. The laughter of a baby echoed through the hallways, soft and bright, like sunlight breaking through old clouds. Grace had stayed, not as a servant this time, but as part of something more. Mark rebuilt his company's image, but the biggest repair was at home. He learned to listen more, to love without walls. Olivia, once guarded and fragile, found joy again in small things, morning walks with Grace and the baby, quiet dinners without tension, and shared prayers at night. Troy visited once hoping for forgiveness, but when he saw the peace Grace had found, he simply nodded and left. Sometimes, letting go was its own kind of redemption. One evening, Olivia watched Grace feeding the baby by the fireplace. He's growing fast, she said softly. Grace smiled. He has your calm. Olivia's eyes glistened. No, Grace, he has your courage. The baby cooed, tiny fingers reaching between them. In that moment, two women, once divided by pain, shared a love that needed no explanation. Life hadn't gone as planned for any of them, but in that house, once marked by sorrow, Grace had truly come to stay.